History will always give you the warning signs. This book is from 1946. This was written, it's called Hitler's Professors. This was written by Jews that went back in because they knew. They knew who started this, and it was the academic elite. It was the eugenics people, it was the Fabian socialists, it was the socialists and the people who just believed in this new world order. And it started in the universities. And so before everything was destroyed, as soon as the war was over, the Jews that escaped went back in. The professors that got out went back in and said, I know which one of you did this. And they documented exactly how it happened. This one is from Germany. I believe this one someday will be in my library as well, on who did this to us. This book is brand new. This is by Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell is, he has a revised and expanded edition out. This is a landmark book. He is really one of the most, I think it was Reagan that said he should be our first black president. He's truly a remarkable man. In this book, he analyzes the role of intellectuals and the roles that they have played in shaping, much to our chagrin in many horrible ways, the 20th century. Shows when their ideas are played out, it usually comes out very negative. Think Karl Marx and eugenics and this, and what's coming, Occupy Wall Street. Who are the intellectuals behind the movement here in America? Thomas Sowell, the author of Intellectuals and Society. He is also a Milton Friedman Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University, is with us. Thomas, how are you, sir?
Fine, thanks.
All right, let's start with what is the big aha moment in here?
Oh, my heavens, I guess it depends on what you're focused on. If you're looking about the survival of Western society, I think the big aha moment is when you realize that between the two world wars and the Western democracies, intellectuals led the charge against military preparedness. So that while Hitler was arming feverishly in Germany, preparing for war, intellectuals in Britain were arguing that the British should disband their military forces as an example to others. An incredible statement, as if Hitler were going to follow that example. But that would be one of the things that strikes me, because without survival, all the other issues don't matter.
Okay. You are you're a road to serfdom guy. You are a leading conservative intellectual. And you're also a former Marxist, correct?
Yes. Yes.
How did you find yourself a Marxist, and then how did you get out of it?
I guess I found myself a Marxist just from observing the enormous economic inequalities. And I think that's one of the things that leads many people into Marxism. That and the fact that there was no alternative explanation that was both plausible and, that could compete with it. And if there's not a competing theory, all sorts of crazy things will be believed.
So you were a Marxist until when?
Until I worked as an economist for the federal government in 1960. And once I saw how the federal government operated from the inside, I realized that the government is definitely not the answer.
No. All right. So you were hanging around in the 1960s. You saw it. You were a Marxist, so you spoke the language. Any doubt in your mind that the people that are running this country and running our universities and running Occupy Wall Street, any doubt in your mind, Marxists?
In some emotional sense, I doubt seriously if most of them have read enough Marx to be sure of what he was saying. But I think they emotionally identify with Marxism. And I think that's what's crucial, because that's what determines their actions.
But you have, I mean, the name of the book is Intellectuals in Society. You have people like Frances Fox Piven, who everybody tries to dismiss, but she's been a great force shaping our future. And she surely understands Marx. The professors at universities surely understand Marx.
Some do. I spend a lot of time doing research on Marx, so I'm not quite as optimistic. But, you know, as Schumpeter said, there are Keynesians and Marxians who've never read one word of Keynes or Marx. They've gotten their ideas second and third hands. I mean, neither Keynes nor Marx was an easy writer to understand.
I tell you, I've read some Marx. I barely understand it. It's gibberish to me. I don't even understand it.
Absolutely. I wrote a book about this some years ago, and I quoted a lot of things that Schumpeter said were necessary in order to understand Marxian economics. And I read it as a reason why so few people, even professors, don't understand Marxian economics.
Okay, so now let me go to Occupy Wall Street, because we were just talking here about some things that I think are happening. What do you think the odds are of riots in the streets here in America?
It depends, I think, on the if Obama gets defeated this fall, I would bet the rent money that there'll be riots, because there are so many people out there with a vested interest in polarization that they will not pass up an opportunity like this. He could be defeated in the most honest election ever held in this country, and yet there will be demagogues out there who will say he was cheated out of it because he was black.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because I tell you, I think President Obama is going to go down as missing the biggest opportunity any president has ever had. And that is, we had a guy who could have completed the healing of this nation, bringing both black and white together. And instead, I've never seen the racism and hatred like it is now, and it's just at the beginning, I fear. I've never seen this like this in my lifetime. Now, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so we didn't have a lot of it. But I've never seen it like this in my lifetime.
Well, what is tragic is that people voted for him. They voted their hopes, and they ignored all the experience. I mean, a community organizer is not in the business of bringing people in together. The community organizer is in the business of polarizing the society, telling people who are less fortunate that they're lagging behind is due entirely to the evils committed by people who are more fortunate. That's true in the United States. It's been true in Europe and Asia and Africa, all over the world. And it's been a very successful piece of demagoguery. And it was successful here.
So if you would read the Weather Underground Manifesto, it talks about polarizing and bringing groups that have felt disenfranchised in any way and bringing them all together and exploiting that. What role has academia or elites used? What role have they played in doing that?
They've played a major role because they take all the statistical disparities as showing that somebody has done somebody else wrong. One of the things I try to do in the book is show that, you know, you can't reason as if we're talking about abstract people in an abstract world. Real people in the real world have had enormously different histories, enormously different opportunities to develop wealth-creating capacity and so forth. And that's why that's what's behind most of the differences in wealth that we hear so much hysteria about. And the answer, of course, is not to turn them against each other, but to allow people who haven't had the access, not only to have the access, but to want the access, because having the access by itself will not do it.
What do you think the president today said that the Native American can hunt the bald eagle, which is obviously a national symbol, but also endangered species. He said it's part of their culture, et cetera, et cetera. What do you make of that?
It's insanity if you're looking at it from the standpoint of helping the country or of helping the indigenous American Indians. How much benefit is it going to be to an American Indian to hunt the bald eagle? Now, you know, how many are ever going to want to hunt the bald eagle? How many of them care?
I have a Native American call my radio program today. so upset, saying, I'm not going to hunt the bald eagle. Just so upset, saying, I'm part of this culture now. I know what that means, and that's a sacred bird to me as a Native American, and it's a sacred bird to me as an American.
This isn't meant to help American Indians. This is meant to help Barack Obama get votes from American Indians and from people who imagine they are friends of American Indians. A couple of years ago, I ran into a group of American Indian young fellows, I guess about 12 or 13 years old, in the Grand Canyon area. And they were really nice kids, bright kids, and so forth. But in the course of discussions, it came out that they had no idea where Philadelphia was. And when I said it's in Pennsylvania, they had no idea where Pennsylvania was. And they lived on a reservation. And so they're not being given the basic tools necessary to advance in the world behind them. And they're going to have a much harder time than other people would. But the people who are teaching them, they're going to benefit because they will have a captive constituency.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about.
I was going to say, you know, you don't have to go to a reservation to find that kind of craziness in schools. It's happening to all of our schools, and the ones who know it are the professors. I contend, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but I contend that the criminals in this, or the ones who are really pushing this caper, if you will, are the intellectuals and the elites, many of them in the educational system, higher educational system, that are indoctrinating our kids, intentionally dumbing them down, and destroying us from the inside.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really the sort of theme, recurrent theme in my book.
Okay, so give me a light at the end of the tunnel. How does the average person, what do they do with it? This is, I mean, first of all, it's just a black and white cover, so it's not like, ooh, that's kind of sexy. I could read that all night. Give me something in this, Thomas, that gives me some hope. Give me the thing that says, okay, now I can do something.
It isn't really, unfortunately, I mean, it closes by simply saying how serious the problem is. It has to be addressed seriously. And everything depends upon whether people are more interested in that or whether they're, you know, titillated by sex scandals, by other kind of nonsense. Because there are people out there who know what they want to do, and they're doing it. And the voting public can stop them anytime they want to, but they first have to want to. And that means they first must understand what is the danger. And the danger is huge.
Okay. Any doubt that Occupy is controlled by the elites or planned by the elites and the college professors, along with the labor unions?
And I don't know how many ordinary people can afford to take a month or so off to hang around in parks. I mean, coming from a background that's very different from theirs, the very idea that I would be able to take a month off and hang around in parks and carry on demonstrations.
How did they get? How did they get white people who are from the upper levels? I mean, these aren't people who are struggling. They got their they're getting their education at Columbia University. You know, Momsy and Daddy, you know, sent them to Columbia because Mommy and Daddy went to Columbia before. I mean, how did it happen?
Well, for one thing, too many people think of the school as the way it was when they went there decades ago. The schools are not that way. You know, I mean, I went to Columbia University, for heaven's sake. I have never given them a dime.
You were a Marxist.
Huh?
You were a Marxist.
Yes, but I mean, I'm not now. But you know, the Columbia University is now promoting the kind of stuff that I finally saw through.
Yeah. All right, Thomas, thank you very much. I appreciate it. The name of the book is Intellectuals and Society, and I'm telling you, this is from the 1940s. This is today. It's the same book. May I recommend, even if you don't read it, this one is going into my library as evidence. It will be erased. Believe me, history is being erased. We all know that the Occupy movement is trying to recreate the situation of 1968 but the roots go much, much farther than that, go way back. They are studying and replicating tactics and motives that date back to the 1800s. The only difference is that today they actually have a real shot at achieving their end game. That's why we're working on a documentary that will expose these radicals for who they really are. You don't want to miss it. More details on this coming up. Back in a minute.